we speak with one voice for everything, and that no matter who of the two of us answers, this is the truth. And our communication. So I actually had two job sharing partners. First, I did this for 1.5 years with one colleague, and then for 1 year with another colleague. And with both of them, really, we had, after a short amount of time, because we were involved in all the communication of the other person, a high level of trust.
I am very happy to introduce my guest, Aaron Merlin Defort, today. Aaron will talk about many aspects of the future of work with me. From job sharing, taking extended parental leave as a dad, gender equality, as well as transferable skills from having lived in many different countries. Aaron is part of the management team of the Center of Digital Technology and Management while writing his Ph.D., focusing on social networks and social capital in entrepreneurial ecosystems. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for being a guest on my show. Now, I would love to know, where are you calling in from? And is there a particular special local site or food you can tell our listeners about?
Yes, so I'm calling in from Munich, Germany. And even though I try to eat less meat or almost no meat, I cannot say no to the famous Weißwurst-Frühstück, the white sausage that you eat here in Bavaria for breakfast. And it's really, it sounds weird, but it's just to try for everyone.
I know, as I grew up in Munich myself, I know exactly what you mean. And my husband, who's American, he tried it as well. I tend to be mainly vegetarian, so I pass on that one, but I like the pretzel. So now, Aaron, could you give our listeners an overview of your professional background, please?
Yes. So I started studying 12 years ago, and I did a program that's called European Business Program. And as the name says, it was relatively international. And I spent 1.5 years in the UK and 1.5 years in Germany. And then I licked blood, as we say in German, and I wanted to go abroad again. And also did my master's then in France with a little exchange in Switzerland and an internship in Barcelona. So I really tried to get around a little bit in Europe for my studies. And I once counted, and I moved 19 times in 10 years of my studies. This was a great time, but I'm happy that I don't have to move that much anymore. So after starting to work in France for 1 year in a small consultancy that does cultural change, I came here to Germany, and now I'm working at the CDTM. And this is where I've been working for the last 4 years, basically. And this is a really special place. So I think I need to explain a little bit more about our organizational setup, because I think it's quite unique. And it also will explain more of what I will talk about later, maybe. Because the CDTM we're self-run. We're 10 doctoral students, and we don't have a boss. And we're responsible for the center and the study program that we run. So there's a lot of students here and us, the PhD students, and we are responsible for really everything from finances, ordering post-its, making sure that the students are happy, recruiting our new colleagues. So all of this is in our hand. And since we don't have a boss, we also decided that in our team, there's not going to be a boss. So we're 10 people and we're all on equal hierarchy, and there's no other level of hierarchy in our team. And this is very, very interesting and challenging, but this also opens up a lot of opportunities in terms of how you work and what you do and how you craft your own job. And this is really amazing. Exactly. And now the program is lasting about 4 years that I'm doing this PhD program. And during that time, I focused a lot on managing here all the operations. And now I'm more in the research phase where I focus on my PhD, which is about entrepreneurship and social relationships inside of that. So very different topic, but also something that I'm very interested in.
Wow. That is just such an amazing background. Thank you for sharing. And, just to touch on the aspect, as I'm so interested in transferable skills from many different life modules, and including living in different countries. Now, you've lived in and studied and worked in so many different countries. So could you share with our listeners maybe some insights and transferable skills you have learned from having lived in so many different cultures?
Yes, I think the main transferable skill is some kind of resilience to change and uncertainty. Because every time that you go somewhere new, this can be a different country or just a different city, you're confronted with a new reality that you need to adapt to. And this is obviously also needed in business. If you change role, if you change company, if you're exposed to a new situation that you've never met. So I think this is definitely the main thing that I took away from this. When something doesn't work out the way it should work out, I believe it will work out. I'm okay with it and I know how to handle it. So this, I think, is a very important, transferable skill that you gain from moving around a lot.
That's so interesting. And now, one other aspect I've seen is that when I was doing my research about you, that you've studied for a year or two philosophy and economics. And so I'm a big believer in non-linear careers. And so I'm curious what these years studying in philosophy and economics have, taught you overall that have been helpful for your current career.
Yeah, this is a great question. So when I was done with this, so it was really only 1 year or even a little bit less. When I was done with that, I did this after my bachelor's. I said I learned more in this short time than I did in my bachelor's, which is obviously not completely true, but this philosophy and economics really taught me a way how to think, because it was very, very structured and analytical. I don't know if you and the listeners know how structured logics are, and it's basically like math, but you try to fill it with more concrete meaning in the world. So you do this math and try to be as clear as possible in your reading, writing, speaking. And this is also what I think is necessary for all jobs like ours in the knowledge economy, where communication is key. You need to know what you're saying and how you say it so that other people understand it. And this, I think, is something where philosophy is really, this is basically one of their core competencies. And this is also what I try to take from there and always refer back to when I'm thinking about structuring a thought, an email, something like this, that I try to be as clear as possible. And this is a type of thinking that I learned there.
Thank you so much for sharing, Aaron. That's so fascinating that, even though, as you said, it's been about a year or a little less that you did that, and how that has impacted your future way of, communicating, thinking about solving problems. It's really interesting.
It was a really insightful time, I must say, very challenging, because it was very different from studying business, which in my view is a little bit like learning vocabulary. So it's important that you know everything that is going on and that you understand what is logistics, what is marketing, how does it work, what do people do there. But it's not as much training your thinking. And that's why I said also earlier that I learned more in this time, but this is just because I learned something completely different than what I had learned in my bachelor's.
So interesting. And, it is a perfect segue to my next question, because you were talking about communication. And you also were job sharing as, head of your entrepreneurship lab. And I believe one of the key aspects of being successful in job sharing is really how to communicate with your partner. So could you share with our listeners a little bit more about why you became a job sharer and how you communicate as a job sharer?
So I didn't really know that I was a job sharer until a couple of months ago. So I did job sharing, but I wasn't aware that I was actually doing it. I just thought, oh, this is the way that we work here. And now I realized that this is job sharing. So as head of entrepreneurship laboratory, me and a colleague, we were responsible for one course here in the study program. And being responsible for a course at our institution means that we have to acquire paying project partners, coach the student teams in the projects that they're doing, coordinate expert lecturers. So it's a big managerial role that also has a lot of external touch points with students, with external lecturers, with external project partners, so paying companies. And I shared this position with a colleague, and we communicated mainly. I think the main aspect when I think about the job sharing is that we shared an email address. So we had each our own email address, but we had one common email address that was forwarded to the two of us. And this is how we managed everything. When we got information from other channels like Slack or phone calls or WhatsApp, we always put it into email so that the other person would be aware of it. So we tried to be always in the loop of what the other person was doing, because we really were responsible for the same thing. And even if we decided that one of us is responsible for this one account, for example, still the other person was in the loop for everything that happened and read all the emails. There's a lot of CCing, but this was really extremely powerful for us. So we only had like half an hour check-in every week, or sometimes even less, because everything went via this email. We work, so the way that we work at the CDTM in the beginning is that we work 4 days a week on things related to the management of the course and of the program and of the institution, and 1 day a week on our dissertation. So my colleague and I, we both had 1 day a week where we were not here. So we had 3 days of overlap. And during these 3 days, we had a lot of working meetings. And you asked in the beginning about the communication. And I think the most important aspect about the communication, in addition to what I said about our internal communication, is the communication to others, to externals, to our little job sharer team inside of the organization, but also obviously outside of the organization, because for them, they don't really understand it. They don't really understand that they need to always write to this funny email address, which was elab@cdtm.de, entrepreneurship laboratory. And this was really educating them to always do so. And we always put ourselves back in CC and so on. This was the main aspect, I think, that made it where the communication was really crucial. Communication towards the students, the project partners, that everybody knew, hey, we are one person, we speak with one voice. Well, we're not one person, but we speak with one voice for everything. And that no matter who of the two of us answers, this is the truth. And our communication, so I actually had 2 job sharing partners. First, I did this for 1.5 years with one colleague, and then for 1 year with another colleague. And with both of them, really, we had, after a short amount of time, because we were involved in all the communication of the other person, a high level of trust. I mean, we also hire the people here ourselves only, so we ensure that there's a good cohesion in the team and similar values. But this level of trust was obviously very important, so that I knew when I'm not there, also on holiday or business trips or just working on my dissertation, I don't need to worry about anything, because my colleague knows everything and will take care of everything. And so this, I think, the communication inside and outside, and then the trust, this really made the job sharing so worthwhile for myself.
Thank you so much for sharing, because I think this is one of the key aspects, having trust in your job sharing partner, and therefore when you are off, knowing that you really can be off because your partner is able to function just as well as you can, and that you don't have to worry about things, and that you can go on vacation, and that you basically have an equal level of of a partner who can do things just as well as you. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And now, so when you reflect back, before you started what you now know as job sharing, is there something you wish you would have known beforehand?
I think to really understand that we have the same role could have helped to make sense a little bit more for myself, but also for others, what I'm actually doing. So in the beginning, I thought we have two roles and we're just doing the same stuff. And if I had known that this is job sharing and we have the same role, we are sharing the role, then it would have made it easier for me to think about what do I actually need to discuss with him? What should I discuss with others? Where does he need to be in the loop? Where not? To have a little bit more of an abstract idea of what I'm actually doing, I think would have helped me to reflect, because back then I didn't really reflect about it at all. We were just like, okay, we have this common email address, let's go. And I think to take a little bit the step back and understand, hey, we share the same role. We are basically one, I said it earlier already, one person. This would have helped me to think about it and to really make sense and to have a much easier experience also with how do I deal with the holidays, what we just mentioned, this trust. I had the trust, but I also still thought that I'm still responsible, even though I wasn't, because my job sharing partner then was responsible.
And so what was maybe one of the most unexpected parts of that job sharing arrangement for you?
I think the most unexpected part was really, or what I think about now, how well it worked. I'm now, when I think about what job sharing is and that most people don't have this, I'm actually surprised that not everybody is working like this. And what I really didn't expect, that it would go so well, that it really is not go so well only in terms of our performance, but also in terms of how you feel. And the feeling that you get from working like this is a calmness that I didn't have in previous jobs, because you just can rely on someone, and this person can rely on you, and you have this little unit that is really for you central, and all the other things cannot get in this little thing. That doesn't mean that we didn't have conflicts. Of course, we sometimes also had conflicts, but this was still only in our unit, and it didn't go outside into the organization or somewhere else, but we were really closed. And this was quite unexpected for me, that this can actually work and work that well and give such a good feeling and good atmosphere, and makes you really happy and home at work.
That's just fantastic. And, I think what is so important is to have role models. So people listening to us, hearing you and realizing, yes, it can work. And that, I think often it is just maybe the fear of the unknown that people might be skeptical. Well, how can that work out? And how could there be trust established? And so it is wonderful to hear this. Thank you.
Yes, and the two people with whom I shared the job, I didn't choose them by myself, but they were chosen by the whole team. So it's not like I chose a friend that I knew before, but these were both people that I hadn't met ever before we started job sharing. And even then, it worked out quite well with the establishment of trust.
That is really great to hear as well, because another, I would say, myth or misperception of job sharing is that, it will only work if one has already worked together or one is a friend together or something like this. So perfect that you are basically demystifying that concept. So thank you.
Very welcome.
And now we're going to switch something to some completely different topic, and which is, I have to say, it is awesome that in our conversation we can touch on so many topics that are very dear to my heart, and that I talk a lot with different people, different guests on my podcast. And so right now we're going to talk about the fact that you are currently taking an extended paternal leave. And for people who might not know this, typically in Germany, many dads might take a 2 month paternal leave. And what was interesting by doing my research, before you even started going on your paternal leave, you were already working in a part-time capacity. And so now I'd love to hear about your experience, being on a paternal leave so far.
Yes, happily. So just maybe I can say a little bit about what happened. So basically the day that my daughter was born, I went from 100% to 40% and worked 2 days a week, because I wanted to, first I was on holiday a little bit, but then afterwards I wanted to also be there for my partner, obviously. And this went on for like 4 months. And then my partner went back to work full time. She has been working full time since my daughter was 4.5 months old. And since then I'm on parental leave, taking care of her mainly. And this experience is I mean, I'm not telling anything new when I say that it's very exhausting. But yeah, but otherwise it has been very, very positive. So I must say my colleagues were extremely supportive here in setting all of this up, this 40% position right after the birth, and then 4 months later, the full-time parental leave for as long as I want. And I'm kind of going back in October. So after a total of 4 months of part-time and 11 months of full-time parental leave. And they were very supportive, my colleagues, my family and friends as well. And it has been a really great experience from that perspective, but obviously also from the perspective that I can spend a lot of time with my daughter in the good and the bad, or the good and the more difficult, challenging times. And this has just been, really great. What I see is that, because you referred to what is normal in Germany, what I see is exactly this. Most parents, and I know a lot of progressive, modern people, do this 12 months for the mother, 2 months for the father model, that has been in existence since, I think, 2012, when the law was implemented that these 2 months exist in addition. And people find a lot of, have a lot of reasons for why the men don't take more parental leave than the 2 months. But my experience so far is that most of these reasons apply exactly the same for the mother. And so I'm very curious about this topic. I'm very, very interested in how this is going to pan out. And I'm also very happy that I can talk about this here on the show, because I do think that men can take a lot out of this time, because it's so fulfilling to spend time with your children, to really see them grow up, and supporting your partner, obviously, at the same time.
I couldn't agree more with you. And I feel many countries, still have a long way to go. I mean, when we look at the US, where there is no federal parental leave to start off with, and even here in Canada, where it exists, but again, even though there is paternal leave available, very few dads, I think, have taken something like you have described. And so what I'm curious about is, when you reflect on your time with, having spent with your daughter, what has been the most surprising aspect with this type of, with this type of care work so far?
Yes, the most surprising aspect has definitely been the pace of change, which is immense. You think you understood something and you have some kind of routine, and 2 weeks later, you have to completely change what you're doing. You have to completely change how you approach her. You have to completely change how you feed her, how you play with her. All of this is changing at a pace that I did not imagine. I started out, and every day I went out and walked, and she was sleeping in this baby carrier. I don't know how that's called in English, in front of
Mm-hmm.
my chest. And I listened to podcasts, and I thought, oh, this is nice. I'm going to listen to so many podcasts. And then 4 weeks later, there was no more sleeping during the day, but 2 or 3 times, and I had a lot of other things to do. And so this change that is always challenging me in my behavior, challenging me in my routines, rethinking what I'm doing. This is I didn't expect this at all. And I also need to say that I'm very thankful that my partner and I, yes, I'm on parental leave now while she's working full time, but we're still sharing the care very much. So she is taking care of my daughter also often, because I still have a lot of engagements with my research or other things. So she's also often spending a lot of time with her by herself. And I think this is great, because otherwise she could not understand what my day looks like, because she doesn't know, she wouldn't know from back then. The change is so fast that she has no idea, but needs to check in every month to understand what is actually happening. And this is something that I have observed also with other fathers, who then, after a couple of months, took care of their children for the first time by themselves for a longer time than 3 hours, that they then say, oh my God, this was the most exhausting day of my life. And this exhaustion could go down if you can get a routine, but since you can't get a routine, the exhaustion is somehow constant. And this is something where I think that now it's mostly men, but it would be the same for women if they wouldn't be exposed to it. Can't really appreciate how exhausting it actually is, or how challenging. Maybe exhaustion is the wrong word, because it is really great, but it's really challenging as well.
Yeah, I was a stay-at-home mom for 11 years, so I can underline every word you're saying. And it's sometimes hard because, I feel unlike at work where you might have a project or a PowerPoint presentation. And so by the end of the day, you can say, okay, I have completed X things. Often looking after a young child, it doesn't feel there is something one can really show for, or whether, but even so, it's sort of a more internal thing. Oneself might have grown because one was able to accomplish something, maybe whether that is calming down the child more quickly than maybe the day before,
Mm-hmm.
things like this. But you're absolutely right. Explaining this or showing this to somebody else that is not always that straightforward and easy. One has to really live it oneself.
Yes. And what you said about you learned how to calm your child. Education is also always self-education. So I always think I also need to adapt my behavior strongly. And this is something where I'm also there. I'm challenged every day, because the behavior that I showed yesterday, maybe in 2 days, is not adequate anymore. So I need to change. I need to change at a pace that is also crazy. And there, the self-development, because you were talking about transferable skills earlier. This is really something where you grow so much, because you need to get used to this change and get used to, you need to change, otherwise you will not be able to deal with it.
just as you said, what you shared in the beginning, how having lived in different cultures and countries and worked there and studied there really was a perfect setup, I feel, from a transferable skills point of view to looking after your daughter. And then I couldn't agree more with the self-awareness. Often people think of it, oh, it is a career break, but I truly feel it is a practical leadership course that includes self-awareness training. And often I feel like children also mirror one's self's behavior. And so it's, definitely it's something of one I feel I wish I would have had that training before when I was a manager of a team. It would have really helped, I feel.
Yeah. Yes.
And now, so I'm curious, what do you feel needs to happen that more men are going to take longer paternal leaves just like yourself?
I think that what needs to happen is exactly the same that needs to happen, that more women are in management positions. So we need role models. This is the most important thing. And then support from the other gender. I think women becoming mothers also can be stronger in stepping up and saying, we share this 50-50. I know it's a little bit unfair to put this again on the mothers, but I think it is very, very difficult to find another solution for this. If you have the role models and your partner asks you to stay home long, then I don't know what else really could be done, because I'm not a big fan of saying all men now need to take as much time as Aaron, because all partners are different. My wife wanted to go back to work very quickly. She's French, so there's a different culture, completely different than here in Germany. And so for us, this was the perfect model. I wanted to stay at home. She wanted to go back to work, but for others, it's not. And I think it really, that's why the push needs to come out of the couple. The push that is facilitated by regulations, like here in Germany, that it's, you get additional money if the partner takes more than 2 months, or something like this, and role models. This helps, but in the end, the couple needs to decide what is the right thing for us in our concrete situation. And there, sorry again, there the mothers need to step up and say, I want you to stay at home longer. I want to go back to work. So this, I think, is my thought on this.
It's a very interesting topic, and I unfortunately I think it will take a while to see effective change. But I feel, seeing role models, even if one, cannot completely, or doesn't, can't completely imitate it, but just seeing men being able to take paternal leave for a longer period of time, might make people realize it is possible. Because I think often here, especially in maybe North America, it is so often that dads are perceived, even on advertising still, like as the dad who is quote unquote just helping out, but doesn't really know how to do it. And so I think seeing that it is possible, seeing that can be done longer, I think that's a great start. But I agree, having a internal at home conversation, it is critical. It is critical. Yeah.
What I now notice in terms of role modeling, I noticed that my friends and colleagues who are not there yet, they now, after experiencing what we are doing, look at the topic very differently. So I can see that in our immediate surroundings, my long parental leave has changed the conversation quite a bit. And also among parents that we now get to know, they say, why did we do it the way they were doing it? can we still change it a little bit? So I think this role modeling is really, I didn't believe so in the beginning, but now I can see how the conversations are changing around me. And so I really believe that this role modeling is very, very crucial. Exactly like how I started, it's exactly the same like with the women in the management positions. When you see, hey, your friend can have a management position, then you feel more like you can also do it. And this conversation that we had for women now, starting maybe 10 years ago or more, now needs to go exactly for men, but for care work.
I completely agree. And you presented a perfect segue to my next question about women in management, because when I was researching about you, I came across a post that you shared about an Harvard Business Review article about gender proportionality principle. And could you explain what that means to our listeners?
Yes, happily. I love this principle. I love this thought. I was a little bit critical of the quota for women on boards because there's just not that many boards, but there's a lot of women. And there were always women who pushed through, and now there's a couple more. And these are oversubscribed. But the gender proportionality principle really tackles this. The gender proportionality principle really supports all women. And how does it do it? It does not set a fixed quota at the top, but it says that the current quota on one management level needs to be the new quota for the next management level. That means if there's 40% women in one management level, in the next round, 40% women need to be on the level above. So by this, we have some kind of a fair representation. There's companies in Germany, and it's worldwide, I'm sure. At BMW, there's only 16% women working there. And at Fresenius, that's a healthcare company here in Germany, there's 67% women working there, approximately. And to force these companies to have equal representation on board level, I don't know how useful this is. I think they should be representative of the company. And this is exactly what the gender proportionality principle is about. They try to have the gender representation that they have on the lowest level on all levels, and do this like a cascade, because this forces managers on all levels to make sure, how do I make sure that in the next round, the women can be promoted? How do I make sure that the women that I have on my team right now will stay on my team and can get promoted? And here we talk about all these things: job sharing, flexible work, childcare. All of this needs to be ensured, because otherwise these women are going to be lost for the manager, and then he can't promote them on the next level, which he needs to do. And I think by pushing the responsibility down from board level, what we have now on EU level, boards have a quota, but pushing the responsibility down on the lowest level, makes a lot of sense, because at the lowest level, the people can actually do something about it. The non-executive board needs to hire 45 to 55-year-old CEOs. The kita doesn't change anything anymore. But it needs to be tackled much, much, much earlier, when the mothers are between 25 and 35. And then this is where they are lost. And this is where the gender proportionality principle can really support people, force people to support them in this critical time. And this, I think, is why I love this principle.
Thank you very much for explaining this. And I will be sure to put the link to the post in the show notes as well. And I completely agree. We ultimately need a pipeline of managers from the beginning, so that when it is time to come to a board level, there is a adequate representation possible.
Yeah, exactly.
So now, we've been talking a lot about different aspects such as flexible work, such as paternal leave. If you look at, the future of work in the next 5 or 10 years and going towards gender equality, like, are there any other aspects or is there anything else you feel that needs to happen that isn't currently happening yet, or not to the extent necessary?
So ever since I learned about job sharing as a HR tool, let's put it like this, I am so convinced that this can play such a huge role in terms of happiness and gender equality in the workplace, that I really think that this needs to be pushed and understand much, much more than it is today. And a lot of experiments can happen there. I mean, what I said, me and my colleagues, we were working 100%, but we weren't working here physically 100%. But we're sharing this one role that we had. And it can go from 60%, 60% work part-time to 100%, 100%. To share a job can be anything, but we try now here in our organization to do the job sharing everywhere because it's just much better for the organization and for the people. So this, I think now I'm a little bit also in a state of mind that I think about this topic a lot, that I think this is really crucial. But otherwise, I think it's flexibility of work. It's maybe also questioning, do people really need to work X hours to have the same salary as if they worked X minus 5 hours? Or do we pay differently? Because today we pay by time, even though we know that I'm talking about knowledge workers. Even though we know that knowledge workers don't perform 40 hours full, we know that they perform completely differently. And so the question also there is, how do we pay people? How does all of this come together? And so I believe that in this new work area, there's so much still to explore, in terms of pay, in terms of flexible work, in terms of sharing the jobs, that we're going to see a lot of experimentation in the next 5 to 10 years and a lot of new things that we are not even talking about right now. But yes.
I completely agree. I feel we are in this big, sort of revolutionary change because of the pandemic and because of all the ramifications from it. And, as who knows how long it is actually going to last. And I feel like, I'm not sure how it is in Germany, but here I would say in North America, I think many senior executives have been trying to get more employees back into the offices. Mm-hmm. And I would say to maybe to some extent limited success, because I think people have gotten very used to, quote unquote, the freedom of being able to do the work where they often feel maybe the most able to do it, because they might be more in a flow, because there is less noise or interruption around. And not to even think about currently with the gas prices and the lengthy commutes. Yeah.
Totally. And I think this flexibilization of where do you work, when do you work. Right now I'm on parental leave, but I still, for this call, went to the office, because in my office it's calmer. I mean, it's night in Germany right now. So there's nobody else here. The internet is better. It's all just, this is the right work atmosphere for me. But at the same time, when I want to do something, have an appointment during the day, then I'm just need to leave. And this flexibilization, and what I said earlier, we need to think about, how do we think about hours and attendance, and all of this is really crucial. so that this flexibility is important. But I also think that offices are important because businesses are comprised of people, and people need also physical interaction. And it will be very interesting how this will develop in the next couple of years, months and years, actually, how we find the right balance.
It's been so fascinating to talk with you, Aaron. So I just wanted to make sure, is there anything that you would like to share with our audience that we have not touched upon today?
I think the main topics that are really close to my heart these days, like male parental leave and job sharing, thinking about what is actually important and how does job sharing enable also equal care. We didn't talk about this in detail, but these topics I think are very crucial to make a happier workforce and better companies. So I think we talked about the most important things already. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, how can people find you on social media?
Happily on my LinkedIn. That's the only media that I'm using, social or not. But I'm relatively active, so feel free to find me there and send me a little message about what you liked. Because, as I said, the role models, it's nice to be a little role model, but it's also nice to not be the only one. So, but to hear about others and see what they are doing and what one can learn from them.
We'll be sure to put your link to your LinkedIn profile into the show notes as well.
Thank you.
And so I just wanted to say thank you again, Aaron. It was such an interesting conversation. We touched so many different topics.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. We hope you gained valuable insights and new ideas. To keep listening to future episodes, please head over to iTunes or your favorite player and subscribe and give it a rating. We would very much appreciate a review and for you to share it on social media, so more people can start innovating in how they offer employment. Until the next time, goodbye!